SFX, slow piano. Wedding bells in the distance, the sound of laughter fading into silence. Narrator, calm, heavy voice. They said money reveals who a person truly is. But no one expected what happened when the billionaire Groom insulted his maid, right before saying, "I do." Before the night was over, every guest would know her name, and the groom would wish he had never opened his mouth. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a reckoning, a night that would expose what love, loyalty, and blood truly mean. Who was this maid everyone mocked? Why did she stare at the groom with such quiet defiance, as if she knew something he didn't? And why did the bride vanish moments before the vows? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about pride, family, and the cost of cruelty. Music swells, fade to black. To understand this night, you must go back months before the wedding, to a small, quiet house on the edge of the city. It wasn't much. Peeling paint on the walls, a roof that leaked when it rained hard, and a kitchen where two sisters shared everything they had, Mara and Lila. Sisters, bound by love, separated by fate. Lila, the elder, worked as a maid in the city. Mara, the younger, had dreams bigger than their circumstances. Their parents had passed years ago in a car accident, leaving them with nothing but each other and a promise they'd whispered over their graves: "We survived together, or not at all." Lila left home every morning before dawn, her uniform pressed, her shoes worn but clean. She kissed Mara's forehead before she left, whispering the same words their mother used to say: "Stay strong, little bird. Your wings are growing." Mara would watch her sister disappear into the early morning fog, guilt gnawing at her chest. She hated that Lila worked so hard while she went to community college on a scholarship, studying event planning and design. But Lila never complained. She simply smiled and said, "One day you'll fly, and I'll be right there cheering you on." Lila worked in the mansion of a man named Ethan Cole, the city's most eligible billionaire, charming, educated, powerful. But with power often comes pride. Ethan had inherited his father's real estate empire and expanded it into tech, hotels, luxury brands. He was featured in magazines, dated models, and lived in a world where people existed in two categories: useful or invisible. Lila was invisible to him, just another servant in his golden world. She scrubbed his floors, arranged his flowers, served his meals, and he never once looked her in the eye. Not out of malice, exactly, just indifference. To him, she was furniture, part of the background. A function, not a person. But Lila didn't mind. She told herself it was just a job, just money to help Mara finish school. She endured the coldness, the dismissive waves, the times he'd leave messes just because he knew someone else would clean them. She endured it all because love makes you strong, and Lila loved her sister more than anything in the world. One rainy afternoon in late spring, everything changed. A young woman arrived at the mansion, a new event planner named Mara. She had been hired to organize Ethan's charity gala, a massive event meant to polish his public image. Lila was restocking the wine cellar when she heard a familiar voice in the hallway above. Her heart stopped. She climbed the stairs slowly, not daring to believe it. And there she was. Mara, now grown, radiant and graceful, wearing a sleek navy blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. She looked every bit the professional she'd worked so hard to become. Lila's breath caught in her throat. The sisters locked eyes across the marble foyer. For a moment, the world went silent. Then Mara's face broke into the widest smile, and she rushed forward. They embraced in the hallway, tears streaming down both their faces, clutching each other like they were the only real things in a world made of glass and gold. "I got the job," Mara whispered. "I'm here, Lila. I'm finally here." Lila pulled back, searching her sister's face. "Does he know?" Mara shook her head quickly. "No, and he can't. Not yet. I need this job. We need this job." Lila hesitated, but she nodded. she understood. In a world that judged you by your last name and your bank account, sometimes you had to hide where you came from just to get a chance to prove where you could go. Ethan was captivated the moment he met Mara, not just by her beauty, but by her intelligence, her confidence, the way she challenged him in meetings and didn't flinch when he raised his voice. She wasn't intimidated by his wealth. She wasn't impressed by his name, and that fascinated him. He started finding excuses to be in the same room as her, asking her opinion on things that had nothing to do with event. Planning. Inviting her to dinners under the guise of discussing strategy. Mara was cautious at first. She'd seen men like Ethan before, men who mistook interest for possession. But over time, she saw glimpses of something else. Moments of vulnerability. Late-night conversations where he talked about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, the loneliness of never knowing if people liked him or his money. She saw a man who was broken in ways he didn't even realize. And against her better judgment, she started to care. Within months, he proposed. It was grand, public, everything you'd expect from a man like Ethan Cole. A rooftop dinner overlooking the city, a ring that cost more than most people's homes, a photographer hidden in the shadows to capture her tears. And she said yes, not because of the money, not because of the status, but because she believed, truly believed, that beneath all the pride and polish, there was a good man trying to break free. But there was one thing Mara didn't tell him: who her sister was. Every day she watched Lila move through the mansion like a ghost, unnoticed and unappreciated. Every day she bit her tongue when Ethan spoke to the staff like they were less than human. She told herself it would get better once they were married, that she could change him, that love could soften the edges money had sharpened. But deep down, she knew. She knew that if he ever found out the event planner he adored and the maid he ignored were sisters, everything would shatter, and that secret would become her greatest test, because on their wedding day, pride and blood would collide in a way no one could have predicted. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let's get back to the story. The day of the wedding arrived like a storm dressed in silk and champagne. Guests from every corner of the city poured into the grand estate Ethan had rented for the occasion. It wasn't just a venue, it was a statement. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, gardens manicured to perfection, a string quartet playing softly near the fountain. Reporters lined the entrance, cameras flashing, shouting questions about the dress, the guest list, the honeymoon destination. Politicians rubbed elbows with tech moguls. Socialites compared jewelry. It was the kind of wedding people would talk about for years, but not for the reasons they expected. Behind the scenes, in the staff quarters and service hallways, another world existed. Lila was there, of course. She had volunteered to work the event, not because she needed the money, but because she wanted to be close to her sister on the most important day of her life. She wore the standard uniform, black slacks, white button-up shirt, hair pulled back in a tight bun. She moved quietly through the chaos, setting up tables, arranging centerpieces, refilling water pitchers. She had only one wish: to see her sister walk down that aisle happy. To witness the moment Mara's dreams came true, even if she had to watch from the shadows. The bridal suite was on the second floor, a sprawling room filled with flowers and sunlight. Mara sat in front of a gilded mirror, her wedding dress a cascade of lace and silk. Her makeup artist had just finished. Her hair was perfect, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her maid of honor, a college friend named Jessica, noticed. "You okay?" Mara forced a smile. "Just nerves." But it wasn't nerves, it was dread. A gnawing feeling in her chest that something was about to go terribly wrong. She had seen the way Ethan treated the staff all week, the way he snapped at the caterers for being too slow, the way he berated the florist for using the wrong shade of white, the way he walked past Lila every single day without a flicker of recognition. And this morning, when Lila had brought coffee to the bridal suite, Ethan had been there. He'd glanced at her with irritation and muttered to Mara, "Why do they keep sending the same maid? She moves like a mouse. It's unsettling." Mara had said nothing. She'd just watched her sister leave the room with her head down, and something inside her cracked. Downstairs, the ceremony space was ready. White roses everywhere, a live harpist, chairs lined in perfect rows, guests were taking their seats, murmuring with anticipation. Ethan stood near the altar, adjusting his cufflinks, laughing with his groomsmen. He looked every bit the confident groom. Untouchable, unshakable. Then he saw her. Lila, carrying a tray of champagne flutes, moving carefully through the main hall to restock the bar. She was trying to stay out of sight, but the hall was crowded and she had no choice but to pass near the altar. Ethan's face twisted with irritation. He turned to his best man and said, loud enough for several guests to hear, "Who let that dirty maid into the main hall? She's ruining the pictures." Silence rippled through the room. Heads turned, cameras pivoted. Lila froze in place, the tray trembling in her hands. Her face flushed with shame. Ethan didn't stop. He gestured impatiently toward a security guard. "Get her out before she embarrasses this family." The guard hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but started walking toward Lila. She didn't move. She just stood there, tears forming in her eyes, her breath shallow. She'd been humiliated before, ignored, dismissed, talked over. But never like this, never in front of hundreds of people, never with cameras recording every second. Upstairs, Mara heard the commotion through the open window. She walked to the balcony and looked down. And she saw it. Her sister standing alone in a sea of wealth and judgment, being escorted out like she was trash. She saw Ethan laughing it. Off with his friends. She saw the guests whispering, some amused, some uncomfortable, none defending her. And in that moment, every memory of kindness she'd seen in Ethan vanished. Every late-night conversation where he'd talked about wanting to be a better man felt like a lie. Every promise he'd made about building a life based on respect and partnership crumbled to dust. She watched her sister bow her head and whisper, her voice barely audible, "It's all right, sir." But nothing was all right anymore. Mara turned away from the window, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Jessica touched her shoulder. "Mara, it's time. They're waiting for you." Mara looked at her reflection in the mirror. The dress, the veil, the life she'd been about to step into. And she realized something that terrified and freed her all at once. She couldn't do it. She couldn't marry a man who saw people as props, who measured worth by status, who humiliated her sister and thought it was funny. Love wasn't supposed to cost you your soul. Moments before the ceremony was set to begin, the wedding coordinator knocked frantically on the bridal suite door. "Miss Mara, everyone's ready. The groom is at the altar. It's time." Mara didn't answer. She stood in the center of the room, staring at her reflection, her chest rising and falling with deep, deliberate breaths. Jessica stepped closer. "Mara, what's going on?" Mara turned to face her, and Jessica saw something in her eyes she'd never seen before. Not fear, not doubt, clarity. "I'm not going through with this," Mara said quietly. Jessica's jaw dropped. "What?" "Mara, there are 300 people downstairs. The press is here. You can't just—" "I can," Mara interrupted. "And I will." She walked to the door, heels clicking on the marble floor, and pulled it open. The coordinator gasped. "Miss Mara, please, the music is about to start." Mara didn't respond. She walked down the hallway, down the grand staircase, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. Guests in the foyer turned and stared, confused. She wasn't supposed to be seen yet. Wasn't supposed to walk down these stairs. But she kept moving, her face set, her heart steady. Downstairs, Ethan was growing anxious. He checked his watch, whispered to his best man, "Where is she?" Then the doors to the main hall opened, and Mara walked in, but she didn't walk toward him. She walked to the center of the aisle, stopped, and slowly lifted her veil. The room fell silent. The harpist's hands froze mid-song. Every eye locked on her. Ethan stepped forward, confusion flickering across his face. "Mara, what are you doing?" She looked at him, her voice calm but trembling with restrained emotion. "I'm doing what I should have done weeks ago." She turned to face the crowd. Cameras clicked furiously. Guests leaned forward, sensing something monumental was about to happen. "You all came here today to witness a union," Mara began, her voice carrying through the hall. "A union between two people who supposedly love each other. But love isn't just words whispered in private. It's how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. It's how you speak to those who can't speak back. And the man I was about to marry failed that test in the worst possible way." Ethan's face paled. "Mara, what are you talking about?" She pointed toward the side door where Lila had been escorted out. "That maid you humiliated today, the one you called dirty, the one you had thrown out like garbage in front of all these people." Her voice cracked, but she steadied herself. "That's my sister." Gasps erupted through the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. Cameras swung toward Ethan, capturing the shock and horror spreading across his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Mara continued, tears now streaming freely down her face. "Lila raised me. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school. She sacrificed everything so I could have a chance at a better life. And when I got that chance, I was so afraid of losing it that I hid who she was. I let you treat her like she was invisible because I wanted to believe you were better than that. But you're not. And I was a coward for pretending otherwise." She turned back to Ethan, her voice softer now, but no less powerful. "I thought I was marrying a man of heart, but I see now I was marrying an empty suit with gold buttons." The room was so quiet you could hear the wind rustling through the garden outside. Ethan finally found his voice, stepping toward her with his hands raised. "Mara, please. I didn't know. If I had known—" "That's the problem," Mara cut him off. "You didn't know because you didn't care to know, because people like her don't matter to people like you." She took off the engagement ring, the massive diamond catching the light one last time, and held it out to him. "I can't marry someone who sees the world that way. I won't." He stared at the ring, then at her, his expression shifting from shock to anger to something that almost looked like shame. But it was too late. She placed the ring in his palm, closed his fingers around it, and turned away. The crowd parted as she walked down the aisle, her head held high, her steps sure. Some guests whispered, some looked away, but a few, just a few, started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. An older woman in the 3rd row stood and applauded. Then a man near the back, then more. By the time Mara reached the doors, nearly half the room was on their feet. Not because they were celebrating a wedding, but because they were witnessing something far rarer: courage. Mara found Lila outside, sitting on a stone bench near the garden, her face buried in her hands. When Lila looked up and saw her sister still in the wedding dress, confusion and panic crossed her face. "Mara, what are you doing?" "The wedding." "There is no wedding," Mara said softly. She sat down beside her sister and took her hands. "I'm so sorry, Lila. I should have stood up for you the first time he treated you like you didn't matter. I should have told him from the beginning who you are. I was ashamed, and that shame made me complicit in his cruelty. I'm so sorry." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to throw everything away for me." Mara shook her head, squeezing her sister's hands tighter. "I didn't throw anything away. I chose something better. I chose us. I chose truth. And I will never, ever regret that." The 2 sisters sat there, holding each other as the sounds of the chaotic wedding hall faded into the distance, and for the first time in months, Mara felt free. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The story went viral within hours. Videos of Mara's speech were shared millions of times. Think pieces were written? Debates raged on social media about class, respect, and the performative kindness of the wealthy. Ethan's company took a hit. Several investors quietly pulled out, uncomfortable with the association. His social media was flooded with criticism. He released a public apology, carefully crafted by his PR team, expressing regret and promising to do better. But the damage was done. His reputation, built on charm and image, had been shattered by one moment of cruelty, and no amount of money could buy it back. Some people defended him, said Mara overreacted, that she embarrassed him publicly instead of handling it privately. But far more people saw the truth. That humiliation is a choice. And Ethan had made his choice loud and clear. Mara didn't read the articles, didn't watch the interviews. She disappeared from public life entirely, retreating to the small house she and Lila had grown up in, and she started rebuilding. Months later, a small bakery opened on a quiet street corner on the west side of the city. It wasn't fancy, no marble counters or gold fixtures, just warm lighting, mismatched chairs, the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls filling the air. 2 sisters ran it. One served customers with a smile, learning everyone's name and their favorite pastries. The other baked before dawn, her hands covered in flour, her heart full. They named it Little Bird Bakery, after the nickname their mother used to call Mara. It became a neighborhood staple, a place where people felt seen, where the coffee was strong and the conversations were real, where every person who walked through the door was treated with the same kindness, whether they wore a suit or paint-stained jeans. Mara found joy in the simplicity, in kneading dough, in watching Lila laugh with customers, in building something that wasn't about status or image, but about care, about dignity, about love. Lila, too, felt lighter. She no longer wore the invisible uniform of servitude. She was a co-owner, a partner. She had a voice, and she used it. They were happy, not in the way fairy tales promise, but in the way real life allows, imperfect, struggling some days, but free. One rainy afternoon, almost a year after the wedding that never was, the bakery door chimed. Mara looked up from behind the counter and froze. Ethan stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, looking smaller somehow. Older. He met her eyes, then looked away. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I've been working with a therapist, trying to understand why I became the kind of person who treats people the way I treated your sister, the way I treated a lot of people." Mara didn't respond. She just waited. He swallowed hard. "I was raised to see people as tools, as assets. My father taught me that power meant distance, that caring made you weak, and I believed him. But you showed me something different. You showed me that real strength is standing up for the people you love, even when it costs you everything." He glanced at Lila, who was watching from the kitchen door, arms crossed. "I'm sorry for what I said, for what I did, for being the kind of man who needed to lose everything to see what really mattered." Lila studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. Ethan turned to leave, then paused. "You built something beautiful here," he said. "I hope you both know that." And then he was gone. The tabloids called it the wedding that never was. Ethan Cole's empire eventually recovered, though he was never quite the golden boy he once was. Some people forgot, others didn't. But Mara and Lila didn't think about him much anymore. They were too busy living, too busy building, too busy being the kind of people their mother would have been proud of. And the sisters found peace, not in wealth, not in status, but in truth, in integrity, in knowing that when the world tested them, they chose each other. They say the richest hearts are not those who own the world, but those who keep their dignity when the world turns cruel. And on that quiet street corner, in that little bakery filled with warmth and laughter, 2 sisters prove that every single day. What would you have done in Mara's place? Would you have walked away from it all or stayed to fight? Would you have revealed the truth in front of everyone or handled it privately? And if you were Lila, could you have forgiven a man like Ethan? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the most powerful love story isn't the one where you find your soulmate. It's the one where you choose yourself, where you choose truth over comfort, where you choose the people who have always chosen you. This story is about more than a canceled wedding. It's about recognizing that respect isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. That how we treat the people society tells us don't matter reveals everything about who we truly are. And that sometimes walking away from everything you thought you wanted is the bravest thing you can do. If you think this story was powerful, wait until you hear what happened when a groom was forced to marry a beggar, only to discover she was a billionaire in disguise. Subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and test the soul. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. And remember, you are not defined by what you have. You're defined by how you treat people who can do nothing for you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Music fades. End screen appears.